Good afternoon, members of Synod. I thought I might just elaborate a little around the song Yanakane, which you've all had a chance to sing now. But there's a little bit of a story to that, and in my role as theologian in residence, I'd like to share that with you. I guess when Jenny asked me to teach what the words meant to her, I guess you as members of Synod would also be wondering why, what do those words mean? Jenny, for you at Synod, what does learning a song like this mean to you?
Yeah. I think to have the opportunity to hear First People's stories and First People's language and connect and listen is a really important opportunity for those of us who are Second Peoples to have an opportunity to experience that wisdom that comes through to us, and that we have the gift of listening to that voice. It's an extraordinary gift. It was a real honour to sit with you. We met up at Uniting Communities many months ago now.
Yes.
And I had the opportunity, it came out of conversation together, and it came out of you sharing a story with me. I wonder whether you would tell that story to the members of Synod so they might also hear where that all began.
Yeah, the story comes from one of our traditional stories of, and it's called The Dreamtime Spirit Cooking the Damper, but in Adnyamatna it's called our Muthana Mai Ambatana, which means the Dreamtime Spirit Cooking the Damper. It's a story about an old woman who had 2 children, and upon coming to the camp, and it's a story about a famine. When you hear a story about a famine in the Bible, better listen, because there's something in it for us all. And so this story is a famine story, and the women and her 2 children had to leave their home to go to another place to find food. And all our dreaming stories have a fixed geographical location. So if you would have come, you came, anyone that's been on a walking on country with us to Nepabunna would have seen this little hill that's white and ash and grey in colour, just sticks out in the landscape. It looks like a damper that's being cooked in the ashes. And anyway, the story is that the woman sent her 2 children out to find sticks to come to make the campfire, because they were going to camp there the night. But the 2 children went a long way from the campsite and didn't return by the time the sun had gone down. Of course, mother, being the parent, was very worried about that and decided to do some things to try and see if her children would come home. She knew as a mum that at the end of the day her children would be hungry, so she decided she'd cook a damper in the ashes, and the smell of the damper cooking would bring her 2 children home. But it didn't, and so, being very worried by this time the sun had gone down, she decided to put some steps in the side of a mountain, and so that if she got up higher, she thought she'd have a bigger, wider view to be able to see her children. And if you go up to Nepabunna, you'll see a hill the other side of Nepabunna called Mount Waiana, which is where she put the steps in the hill. You'll see those steps there. And but the children, of course, were lost. And but the song, after she had done everything that she humanly possibly could do to find her children, in her grief she sat down, and then the song of the bellbird came to her, and the song of the bellbird went like this: Waina yana runga vaku vaku winmari manda Waiana yana runga, vaku vaku in Marie Manda. Waiana yana runga, vaku vaku in Marie Manda. Waiana yana runga, vaku vaku in Marie Manda. The song of the bellbird led her to where her two children were. And the one was found up at Mount Letty near Murray, and the other one was found under the shadows of Mount Waiana. But as I was sitting with that particular song of the bellbird, I realised that, and our old people have always told us that we ukupanda, we mimic the sound of creation. So, that's the Yanakane song is us mimicking the sound of creation. And, it was, we're learning from our ancestors a way in which we could hear the voice of God again. Creation is God's oldest voice in this land. And when we go out on country, we get the opportunity to sit in creation, on country, and we hear the voice of the bellbird. And the other, the creatures, the sounds that creation make. And the wind, for example. I'm the north wind, and the opposite moiety is the south wind. So we know, and how our ancestors have taught us about the winds. So, and the story of our ancestors is very, very important. And I started thinking about the stories of our ancestors, and when I took people up walking on country, there's an opportunity for people to hear the stories of my ancestors. I started to think about, what about the stories of your ancestors? The story of God in your particular culture. It's very important because I've had a different way of reading the Bible now, realising that the Bible, over half the Bible, the books in the Bible, there's 39 books that are attributed to the story of the ancestors and of the Jewish ancestors. And for us to actually understand the Bible properly, we actually need to know what's the relevance of the story of our ancestors. So in October this year, the 21st and 23rd, we have had a very committed committee meeting towards developing a program called Connecting with Our Ancestors, and it's going to be held at Moonta, recognising the Cornish Celtic heritage of Second Peoples, and anybody wishing to explore their ancestry, and also to have a dialogue with the First Peoples about Indigenous spirituality as well. That's a project that we've been working on, and be able to make that available. There are flyers available here at this synod.
Aunty Denise, you've talked about the importance of listening to the voice of God in creation and connecting with our ancestors and listening to the wisdom of our ancestors. What do you hope for us as a synod, or for us and our congregations and our churches in doing those things? What do you hope for?
Well, one of the things that I've discovered during my time as theologian in residence, and I'm hoping that it's something that I can share with the synod, the members of synod, and that is that I've found a new and a fresh way of reading scripture when I realised that 39 books, the Old Testament, is the story of the Jewish people and their ancestors. That's a lot of books to give towards your heritage, talking about your ancestors, and it's repeated in the Old Testament over and over and over again. The God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. The God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. 39 books is attributed to the Jewish ancestry. And I started to sit down and think about what relevance does the Jewish ancestry have for me and for First Peoples and Second Peoples alike. And I think, in the same vein as, and it's a bit funny, Jenny, I often think of it in the way that chefs prepare something a little earlier so that they can present the completed goods. They say, here's one I prepared earlier. In a sense, that's how I see the Old Testament now. God has prepared something for us to follow. The thing for us as First Peoples and Second Peoples, though, is to actually take what God has done with the Jewish people and relate it to our own culture. How do we see God through our own culture? How do we walk in the footsteps of Jesus here in Australia? Of late I've been sitting down and thinking of that old hymn, on a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame, but 'twas for that old cross Jesus suffered and died. And I've been thinking, how does that story that was lived out so far away, how relevant is that for me here in Australia? And of course, it's very relevant. Looking for, the story of Christ here in this land, and as I said previously, just a little earlier, that God has always been in this land. We've known God as Arawatana, and many names for God here in this land. And the Most High has always been here. If we sit and listen to creation, and we will hear God's voice, because creation is the oldest voice of God here in this land. It always has been, and still is.
Arawatana, Ngapalanga Ikanda, God is present here with us.
That's right.
That assurance. We've heard lots about the statement from the heart in recent times. I wonder what God might be calling us to as a uniting church, as Congress, as an act of covenanting, what God might be saying to us.
There are two things. One, what the First Peoples have always been saying to us, and that is the call for treaty, the call for a voice to Parliament, and see, the call to a voice to Parliament requires a referendum, this new government are already talking about their commitment to the Uluru Statement from the Heart, and they're wanting to bring in, within this next 4 years in their term in government, they're wanting to bring or to get a yes vote for a referendum to enshrine the Aboriginal voice in the Constitution. It requires a constitutional change, so we have to have a referendum. But I'm not really sure, Jenny, that actually people going to the polls and having to vote on it would have enough information about it. And so that's our job as a church. Our responsibility as a church is to inform them so that when they go to the polls, that we will get a yes vote, and Aboriginal peoples voice will be enshrined in Parliament. It's very important for us to do that because we are now Aboriginal people. We're a minority group, and we need to have our voice heard. And so, I think it's really important that for us as a uniting church, that we actually give the next synod, the opportunity for us to actually sit and make it a priority. Make the Uluru Statement of the Heart a priority, not just something on the fringes, or it's not something for the committed, faithful few that come along to Congress meetings or to covenanting meetings. It's the business of the whole church. You will be, the synod members will be asked to vote on this question of a voice to Parliament. How will you vote? And we have an opportunity for you to look at that, and through our covenanting relationship, give Tali a call, our covenanting coordinator, and she can advise some steps that you can take.